Lima is the second largest desert city on Earth. 10 million people. Under 10 millimeters of rain in an average year. A coastline where clouds arrive every winter and refuse to break. The city does not drink rain. It drinks 3 rivers falling out of the Andes, the Rimac, the Chillon, the Lurin, and for months at a time, those rivers run close to empty. But high above the traffic, in a village called Huamantanga, in mountains almost no visitor ever sees, there are channels cut into the hillsides, stone-lined, hand-built, 1,400 years old. For most of the last century, they sat collapsed, silted, forgotten. Then a handful of engineers and villagers cleared one out and let the water back in. And the water did something water is not supposed to do. So they put a chemical tracer into it to find out where it went. What came back out of that mountain, and how long it took to come back, is the reason Lima's water utility is now spending millions of dollars on ditches. Long before Lima existed, before the Inca, before Spanish stone, this coast belonged to people who had already solved the problem the modern city cannot. Around 600 AD, the Wari spread across these highlands. They faced the same arithmetic every Andean society faces. Too much water for 4 months, almost none for the other 8. Reservoirs were not the answer. Reservoirs evaporate under equatorial sun. Reservoirs silt up. Reservoirs need a dam, and a dam needs a valley you are willing to drown. So they built something stranger. They built canals designed to leak. The Quechua word is amuna, from a verb meaning to retain, to hold something back. Locally, they are also called mamantio, from the Spanish for suckling, because the mountain is supposed to feed the valley slowly, over months, the way a body feeds a child. An amuna does not carry water to a village. It carries water sideways across a slope, away from the stream, to a place where the rock underneath is fractured and porous, and there, it lets the water go. The water sinks. It disappears into the mountain. That is not a design flaw. That is the entire point. Then Spain arrived. Highland communities were reorganized and relocated. The collective labor systems that maintained thousands of kilometers of terracing and canal were dismantled or redirected. Amunas are not built once. They must be cleared by hand every year, before the rains, or they choke. Nobody cleared them. Then the 20th century emptied the mountains a second time. Lima went from under 1 million people in 1940 to roughly 10 million today, and every one of those migrants came from somewhere. Villages that had held these canals for 50 generations dropped to a few dozen families. Across the Peruvian Andes, an enormous inheritance of pre-Columbian water engineering now lies abandoned in the grass. Lima did not outgrow its water. It forgot where the water was being kept. But losing the amunas did not just cost the highlands a canal. It cost the entire coast its clock. Here is what happens now. Rain falls on the Puna between December and April. It hits slopes that have been grazed bare and compacted hard for 400 years. It does not soak in. It runs. It reaches the Rimac in hours. It reaches the Pacific in days. Then May comes, the rain stops, and Lima spends the next 7 months living off whatever it managed to catch in concrete. And the one natural system that used to cover that gap is disappearing. Peru holds around 70% of the world's tropical glaciers. Since the 1960s, the country has lost more than half of its glacier surface. Those glaciers were never just scenery. They were a delay mechanism, releasing meltwater precisely when the rain had stopped. That buffer is melting out of the equation, permanently. What few people realize is who pays for this first. Roughly 1.5 million people in Lima have no piped connection at all. They buy water from tanker trucks, by the barrel, and they routinely pay several times more per litre than the households connected to the network. The poorest city on the continent's driest coast pays the highest price for the same water. So this is Huamantanga, properly. A village of a few hundred people at around 3,300 meters, in the Chillon Basin, one of the 3 rivers Lima drinks from, directly above the city that has never heard of it. Its hillsides are laced with old amunas, some of them Wari, most of them dry. Since the mid-2010s, the community has been working with Peruvian and international researchers, including teams from Forest Trends, CONDESAN, and Imperial College London, on one of the most quietly radical water experiments anywhere in the world. The premise was simple. What happens if you put the water back in? The answer is not in the canal. The answer is buried inside the mountain. They cleared and repaired roughly 10 kilometres of channel across more than a dozen amunas. No cement, no pumps, stone, clay, and hands. In the wet season, they opened the intakes and let the streams spill sideways across the slope. And within the first year, the villagers reported something they had heard about from their grandparents but never seen. The springs came back. Small seeps downslope, pucuyos, that had been dry within weeks of the rains ending began holding water into June, then July. The community knew what was happening because their oral tradition had told them it would. Nobody could prove it, because the moment the water enters that rock, it is invisible. You cannot follow it. You cannot measure it. You are asking a mountain a question and waiting to see what it says. And this is where the fragility of the whole idea becomes obvious. An amuna only works over specific geology. The rock beneath has to be fractured enough to swallow water and dense enough to hold it, and it has to be tilted so the water travels toward a downslope spring rather than straight into the water table and out of reach. Move the same canal 2 valleys over and it may do nothing at all. It requires annual maintenance forever by people who live at high altitude in villages that are still losing population every year, and it produces no visible asset. There is no dam to photograph, no ribbon to cut. A politician who funds an amuna has funded a shallow ditch full of stones. That means this system does not fail because it is bad engineering. It fails because it is invisible engineering, which is exactly the mistake Lima has been making for 100 years. It is tempting to blame the drought, but Lima does not have a water shortage. Lima has a water timing problem. More than enough water falls on the mountains above the city every single year. The Rimac Basin is not running out of rain. It is running out of delay, the natural machinery that used to hold the wet season back and release it into the dry one. For a century, Lima has answered that with the only tool a modern city trusts: concrete. Reservoirs, tunnels, transfers, treatment plants. Gray infrastructure built to catch water at the bottom of the system after it has already raced down the mountain. The Wari did the opposite. They intervened at the top and used the mountain itself as the tank. So the villain in this story is not the desert, and it is not the glacier. It is an assumption. The assumption that storage means a wall. Which is why, for 400 years, nobody could say whether these canals had ever really worked at all. And Peru is not the only place asking that question. In the Sierra Nevada of southern Spain, there is a network of channels called the Acequias de Carrio, built by Moorish engineers around 1,000 years ago on exactly the same principle. Divert snowmelt sideways, sink it into the mountain, let it re-emerge downslope, months later, when it is needed. Spanish researchers and local communities have been restoring them for the same reason Peru is. Because the snowpack that used to do that job is failing. 2 civilizations, 2 continents, no contact between them, and the same solution. Hydrologists have a modern name for this. Managed aquifer recharge, deliberately putting water into the ground so the ground can give it back later. It is currently one of the most fashionable ideas in 21st century water engineering. It was standard practice above Lima in the year 600, which is exactly why the team at Huamantanga needed to prove it worked. Back to the mountain, and to the question nobody could answer: where does the water go? So the researchers did the only thing you can do. They dosed the canal with a harmless chemical tracer, sealed it into the amuna, let the mountain swallow it, and then watched every spring downslope for months. The tracer came back. Not in hours, not in days. The first of it surfaced after about 2 weeks. The average took roughly 45 days, and some of it did not come out for 8 months. 8 months. Water poured into a ditch in February, walks back out of that mountain in October, the deepest, driest, most desperate month of Lima's year. The mountain is the tank. The rock is the pipe. Gravity is the pump. No dam, no reservoir, no evaporation loss, no electricity, no resettlement. Nothing to maintain except a trench cleared by hand once a year by people who are already there. Then the team ran the numbers for the whole basin. Divert around 1/3 of the wet season flow through restored amunas above Lima, and in the first months after the rains stop, the months when the city is at its absolute thinnest, the water coming down those valleys rises by roughly 1/3. 1/3. In the season that decides whether Lima has enough. Across the full year, that is enough water for about 3/4 of a million people. From ditches, dug by hand, by people who died 14 centuries ago for a city that did not exist yet. Peru saw those numbers, and to its genuine credit, the law changed. Legislation now requires Peruvian water utilities to earmark a share of what they collect for what the country calls natural infrastructure. In Lima, that means roughly 1% of the water tariff, money taken from a customer in a coastal apartment and spent on a hillside they will never visit. SEDAPAL, the utility, has committed something in the order of $23 million to it, and then it slowed down. The money exists. The pipeline of projects capable of absorbing it does not, because building an Amuna requires the one thing no procurement system is designed for: a long negotiation with a community that legally owns the land, holds the knowledge, and has every historical reason to distrust the city. So Peru now has one of the most forward-thinking water laws on the planet, a proven 8-month storage system sitting in the mountains above its capital, and it is still learning how to spend the money. The easy part of the conversation is restore more of them. There are Amunas scattered across the basins above Lima that nobody has even mapped. Restoring them is cheap by the standards of civil engineering, employs highland communities directly, and starts working within a single rainy season. The hard part of the conversation is what comes after. Because a functioning system means Lima paying Huamantanga permanently for a service with no invoice, no meter, and no visible product. It means 10 million coastal residents accepting that their dry season shower depends on a few hundred people at 3,300 meters continuing to clear a ditch by hand every November. That is not a technical question. It is a question about whether a megacity is willing to admit that it depends on a village. I genuinely like to know what you think about that one, because the engineers are not the ones who will decide it. Stand next to one of these things in the dry season and it is genuinely unimpressive. A shallow trench, a metre wide, lined with rough stone, running along a contour and vanishing into the grass. In August, it holds nothing at all. Walk past it and you would read it as a ruin, a scar left by people who are gone. But it is not a ruin. It is infrastructure that was simply switched off. For 1,400 years, these canals waited in the grass, structurally intact, requiring nothing from anyone except that somebody remember what they were for. They were not monuments to a lost civilization. They were instructions. And Lima is not a special case. It is a preview. Every city that depends on seasonal snow and ice for its dry season water is now watching that dependency fail. Santiago, La Paz, Los Angeles, Delhi, large parts of Central Asia. The tropical glaciers above Peru are just the fastest disappearing version of a problem that reaches across 4 continents. The instinct in all of those places will be the same instinct Lima had: build higher walls. Dig longer tunnels. Move water further. That works until the water you are moving stops arriving on schedule. Green infrastructure does not replace the gray. Lima will still need its reservoirs and its treatment plants. But the Amunas do something concrete structurally cannot. They restore timing at the top of the watershed using the largest storage vessel available anywhere in the system. The mountain was always the reservoir. The steps are not mysterious. Map the surviving Amunas across the Rimac, Chillon, and Lurin basins. Restore them with the communities that own them, not around those communities. Pay for the service, permanently, through the tariff mechanism that already exists in Peruvian law. Protect the Puna grasslands above them, because a compacted hillside sheds water no matter how good the canal is. And accept the thing that makes all of it work, that the knowledge required to fix Lima's water was never lost. It was just left somewhere the city stopped looking. The people who cut these channels were not building for themselves. And Amuna gives nothing back for months, and its full benefit lands on people downhill, in a season that has not arrived yet, in a year the builder may never see. They were engineering for a future they had no stake in. 1,400 years later, that future is a city of 10 million people, wondering where its water is going to come from. The answer has been sitting in the grass above them the entire time.